best, right? But I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So my name is Callale Concon, and I'm currently the University Ombudsperson at UC Merced. Um, I'm also a founding staff here at UC Merced, so I'm like one of the dinosaurs here on this campus, where the bobcats there used to be a mountain lion on this campus. Um, and the bunny rabbits. There was tons of bunny rabbits. So I've been very, very privileged to really be a founding staff at UC Merced. Just so you know what the ombuds role is, just to remind you, the Ombuds Office is an informal and confidential and safe space for anyone on the campus community to really come to our office to talk about issues, concerns that they may be going through. Um, for students, it's like, your grades or maybe issues with a faculty or even, maybe a roommate and so forth. How it's relevant, because I know that you all work at CARE. I think for most of you, the Ombuds Office is one out of three offices that is confidential and not a mandatory reporter. So just so you knew that, I do get a lot of students that will say, this happened, wasn't too sure, but I don't want to tell anybody because they're mandatory reporters. So just to let you know that. So let's see, I'm not going to go way back, but I have to give you a little bit of how I came to be. So I was born in an island in the Philippines called Negros Oriental. And so if you translate that, it is the Black Orientals, as the Spanish actually named that island. And so in the late 60s, there was this wave of Filipinos coming to the United States. And my parents, not knowing anybody in the United States or anything like that, my dad said, you know what, let's go to the USA. I heard there's a lot of opportunity and so forth, so let's do it. My mom, who was a midwife in the Philippines, really didn't want to go. She, comes from a family of 10 and didn't really want to go. But my dad just urged her and said, this is going to be a really great opportunity. So actually, my parents in 1969 left to the United States and left us 4 children back, and then we met with them later on, like 6 or 7 months afterwards, right? I grew up in San Francisco. Originally, my parents were supposed to go to, I guess, Seattle. And I asked my parents, like, why did you want to go to Seattle? And they basically said, well, because everybody else on the plane, they were headed to Seattle as their port of entrance. So they were thinking that they were going to go to Seattle, but eventually they decided to go to San Francisco because they found a distant relative that actually lived there. So that's how we ended up in San Francisco. I do want to say that people might say, oh, wow, San Francisco is great. It's really diverse city and all that stuff. And I have to say, back in 1969, if you can just remember the history of the United States at that time, there was really not a lot of sensitivity towards people that did not speak English, like myself. It was really, the mentality was, you've got to really assimilate instead of acculturate, which is now about embracing these 2 cultures and being really more sensitive, right? And so I was 6 years old, and I really had to assimilate fairly quickly in San Francisco, and my other 2 other siblings were also going to school. And I'll tell you a funny story. It's like one of our first American language or was the F word. We didn't even know this was happening, because the kids, like, we would go to school and we'd say, whatever, hi, in whatever way we would say, and they would say, oh, F you, right? Like F you, right? And we were thinking, oh, wow, okay. So we would go around telling everybody, F you, right? I know, Connie's laughing, but we were we had no idea until about several fights later. My brother gets into fights because we realized that those are like bad words, right? So we learned all the appropriate bad words very early in San Francisco. But to be honest with you, we actually learned how to speak English through watching TV. I mean, we didn't have TV from in our island. So I really learned how to speak English through watching like Gilligan's Island or like Hawaii Five-O, the Brady Brunch. Gosh, what other whatever shows were back then? Kung Fu. Oh my gosh, that was so cool. So anyway, I grew up there. My parents were really, because we were like alone, with no other family and so forth. And, being Filipino, just really, strict Catholics. And so they really decided that, we should go to parochial school. And so actually, starting like in fourth grade, I ended up going to parochial school. We all did, and went there throughout high school in San Francisco. Fast forward with that, ended up, I really kind of, well, as an immigrant, my parents worked really hard. Like my dad and my mom like had two jobs, right? And so my siblings and we kind of just ran around amok in San Francisco with the neighborhood kids, and we just kind of played and so forth. And it was great. So we kind of raised ourselves in a way. I mean, my parents were there, but the language of education was not in my family, unlike what you might think. My dad did not graduate from a four-year college, and neither did my mom. They both graduated from vocational school. And so I know, like in high school, I was really raised by nuns and sisters, right, that were predominantly white. And so even though I had good grades, basically in high school, they told me that I would make a really good secretary. And so I was like, okay. And so some of my other friends were like, okay, well, I'm going to go to San Francisco State, or I'm going to go to Berkeley, or I'm going to go here. But the nuns, some of the nuns that were advising me told me that I'd really be a good secretary, and I should really go to like Heald Business College and all that stuff. So I was like, okay. I mean, my parents really didn't know much of this educational system. They knew that it was important, but they just didn't know how to navigate, and so we kind of had to navigate that ourselves. And so I graduated from Heald Business College with a administrative secretarial science degree in secretarial science. And I have to say that I actually could type 100 words per minute. That's my claim to fame. So after that, I, thought, I really want to get a four-year degree and so forth. And so I did eventually pursue that. But I did it kind of in an odd way. I mean, I got married and had kids. And, at the age of really 29, I went back to school to finish my bachelor's degree, which I did. And so I think I was about 30 when I finished my bachelor's degree. And I had a really wonderful supervisor who basically said to me, you know what, I mean, you're really talented. Thank you, Destiny. You're really talented and so forth. Don't give up now. You should really get your master's. And so I was like, oh my gosh, really? So, after 6 months of just resting after my bachelor's, I went ahead and pursued my master's in higher education leadership. And I got that over at Sacramento. And at that time, I got at that time, I was working at CSU Stanislaus because we had moved in the Valley. And so that was really interesting because I just felt like I always just kind of fought and struggled for my degree. But I knew that was really super important. So as of, this date, out of the 4 children, I'm the only one who has a 4-year degree and a master's degree out of us 4. And there are my parents have 10 grandchildren. My son is the eldest, and just last year he graduated from UC Davis, and it's the first grandchild of my parents that graduated from college. Thank you. Yeah, and so it just, that was such, like, to me, like, such an accomplishment, because when I graduated with my bachelor's degree, as well as my master's degree, I mean, the nieces and nephews were all there. And so now, the language of education is in our home. And so it's really kind of interesting, because now it's like expected, like, we want you to get an education, and so forth. And I think it's just was really, really important for me to make sure that I kind of modeled that. And I mean, I took the tougher road with having children and so forth, and working full time. And because I used to go to Sacramento every Wednesday and every Saturday, and that was tough from the Central Valley. But I did it, and I don't know if I've recovered from that, but I did it. So, and then after that, I've been in higher education for about 23 years now, and I just kind of worked myself up into the ranks. And I always just kind of looked at things as opportunities, right, for whatever they were, right, just opportunities for my growth, opportunities for me to be exposed to maybe a different skill or a training. And so 15 years ago, I was hired at UC Merced as the founding director for admissions and retention and recruitment for the graduate program. But I was by myself, all alone, and I wore many, many hats for about 3 years, and then started to build the main functional areas at UC Merced's graduate division that you know of now. And then about 4 years ago, I started to think about, what else am I going to do? And so the ombuds position was open, and it was just very much in line with what I've always, been interested in, because my bachelor's degree is in organizational communications. So I've always been kind of interested with that. And then I got this job, and I'm continuing to just really learn quite a bit. So really, that in a nutshell, that's kind of the story of my life. I have 2 children. My son, and I have a special needs daughter. She's 20. Gosh, I forgot now. I think she's 25. Sequoia. And so that has always been always challenging to me, but she's been the greatest gift to me as a parent, and as really as a human being, because she's really allowed for me to through her who she is, or her being, I've really learned so much about myself, and especially about patience, and especially about diversity. So she's really been a blessing to me. So I think that's all I had, because I knew it was about just 10 minutes. So do we have Michael on now, or?
So I believe Michael will be joining us in just a few minutes.
Okay.
But I guess we can get started. If anybody has any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask, or you could put it in the chat box. So we'll just leave some room for some questions from the audience.
Oh, there's Michael. He's connecting. So any questions?
So Destiny asked a question. This is gonna sound weird, but what was your favorite struggle?
Wow, my favorite struggle. That's a good one. I think my favorite struggle was, obtaining my bachelor's and my master's degree, because I just it seemed endless. to me, but I knew I was doing something different, you know, and something that was going to be like a legacy for my family, right? So I think that's my favorite struggle. Yeah. Not a question, but definitely enjoyed hearing your story. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Callale.
Sure.
Hello, Michael. Everyone, sorry, Michael's a little bit late.
I apologize for being late.
No worries, no worries. We understand. Michael, if you would just like to share your story a little bit before we get into the Q&A portion of our event.
Yes, so my name is Michael Salvador, and it's my pleasure to be a part of this. Thank you so very much. I do apologize. I ran into some unexpected family issues, and I apologize. I'm actually sitting in the car outside of the hospital, and I apologize for any type of interruption. So my story is probably a little bit different than most. I am an attorney. I'm a former judge at the state level and federal level. I switched over to higher ed. So I went through California State University, Fullerton, California State University, Fresno, and now I'm ending up here at University of California, Merced as the Director of Compliance. My area is specifically civil rights. So I deal with Title IX and Title VII, and I deal with the same types of cases and issues here. So in the past 20, 25 years, my specialty has been labor and employment law, specifically dealing with sexual violence, sexual harassment, and discrimination cases. I am first generation. So I started, or my parents emigrated here from the Philippines to New York. And then through a whole series of life events, I ended up in California. And I'm very happy to be part of the University of California, especially Merced, because these types of things that I'm now currently working, it's something that I've done for all of my life. So that's, in a nutshell, very briefly, the career portion. But I'm also very proud to say I'm married. I've got 2 beautiful children. And I do have a whole other set of experiences outside of the career and family. I have been a law professor, so I've been an adjunct professor in San Diego. I also am, when in San Diego, I was very much part of the Asian American Bar Association. So I used to attend their functions as well as give many presentations such as this, as well as many speeches to various Asian American groups. And again, I'm very happy to be a part of this. Thank you very much for inviting me. And of course, I apologize for being late.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing. We hope that all is well. Thank you for coming to our event. Considering the circumstances, we really appreciate it. And again, we hope that everything's all right on your end. Does anyone have any questions for Michael before we move into the question and answer portion?
Yeah, I have a question. What got you interested in law, and like what prompted the switch to higher education?
I changed law prior to becoming or going to law school. I had a job as a what they call a legal examiner, and my interaction with other attorneys led me to conclude that I could do what they do, and I simply decided, you know what, based on what they're doing, I know I can achieve the same types of things and be as successful as them. So then I applied and was accepted to University of Bridgeport and ultimately University of Notre Dame London Law Program. While I was in law school, I also I took a job as a part-time court clerk, and then that led to a full-time law clerk, and then I began to apply for other jobs, not knowing that the judge that I was clerking for was on the selection panel, which then led me to the whole judicial process. So those series of events, those interactions, those networking types of incidents just brought me throughout, or it was a very huge stepping stone that I encourage all of you to use, because if it wasn't for the judge being on that panel, I would not have been a state judge. And then from there, I just moved very quickly to the federal level. But switching to higher ed, I had children, and I wanted to make sure that everything that they did, I wanted to be a part of and aware of. Especially the Title IX the sexual violence, sexual harassment, and the discrimination portion. So I shifted from the law area to higher ed. And I'm sorry, there was another question that was typed out. I didn't get a chance to read that very
Yeah,
quickly.
we do have some questions. So the first one is from Athena. She asks, how did you navigate law school as a first-generation student? And do you have any advice for first-gen students considering law school?
Yes, so I highly, highly recommend law school. And during my first year, especially at the University of Bridgeport, which then was, which then changed to University of Quinnipiac Law, but during that change, I changed over, or I transferred over to University of Notre Dame. It's extremely cutthroat there. So the stories of people taking books, the stories of things where other students would try to undermine each other, those are all true, you know. But what I would strongly suggest is that the mentality of understanding exactly what the instructor says is something that I can't give enough weight to that, because if you give that person exactly what they're looking for, you're already, 5 steps ahead. Now, there's this whole cultural thing in New England, because I went to a place called Colby College, and it's not a very large school, but I was the 1% minority student there. So I was the token Filipino at that school. And even though my wife calls me the whitest Filipino she knows, it's very dramatic, being first generation and interacting, with these white Anglo-Saxon New England Protestant students who all look the same. I mean, they wore their LL Bean shirts, the collars with the polo, all that whole New England look, you know, and here I am, with being first generation. My parents, at that point, my parents, they were still alive, but when they emigrated here, they were doctors. So we were kind of in that area where there was a little bit more respect, and being a first generation and being in that area, there was a lot of, well, let's just say, discrimination that I faced, because of the different color, because of the language, because of how people portrayed me. So I just stuck with what I knew. And what I knew was I knew how to understand what the issues were. And then from there, I networked. And that led me to state level, federal level, and then here at UC Merced. So if there's anything you guys can take from this, it's just don't stop. Be extremely persistent. And here I am sitting now as a University of California director of Office for the Prevention of Harassment and Discrimination. But a few years ago, I was, United States judge. And a few years prior to that, I was a state of New York judge. And the people that came to my courtroom, it was eye-opening experience for someone. And many times I look younger than I appear to be sometimes, and they didn't like that. And then they saw me as, someone who is, a non-white attorney, non-white judge. And some of them really were able to understand what I'm saying, and maybe, it seems as if they accepted my analysis better. So please be persistent. Do not stop. There are opportunities out there, especially for first generation, especially for persons of color, and right now, especially, so I'm convinced, and I'm not the smartest guy. So if I can do all this stuff, I know everyone there can. So all you have to be is just persistent. And I hope that answers your questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. So we're going to be moving into the Q&A portion if anyone else doesn't have any questions.
Yeah, so I guess for both Callale and Michael, what did your support systems look like throughout like your education and your career, and even now? Like, what did it look like to receive support from your support system, and how did you like create that?
Oh, are you deferring to me, Michael?
Well, I'll ladies first. I'll follow up.
Okay, a support system, and I think Michael can probably attest to this, but a little bit different because Michael's parents, but because I was the first in my family and my parents did not have a 4-year education, the language, like I said, the language education was not in the home, right? I really had to turn to others who, for my support, right? So my family is that, you know, emotional support and that identity that I have, right? But when it came to education, career, and navigating all of that, those were, and what Michael said, those were the networks that I made. Those were the mentors that I sought. Everybody that you meet can potentially serve as that. When you think about those support systems, they are a variety of people. You know, when it comes to a mentor doesn't necessarily have to be someone that's in your field of interest. I mean, it can be somebody that's just navigating like higher education or law school, right? You don't have to, it's just someone to help you navigate through that. So I think as a API, especially because we don't ask for help, it's just in our culture. It's really important to ask for that help. At UC Merced, and I think Michael can attest this to wherever you go, and I even felt this in San Francisco, is that you're sometimes the one and only one there, right? So when I was the assistant dean for the graduate division, we go to the system-wide meetings. There were maybe out of 10 campuses, I was the only female Filipina assistant dean there, right? Everybody else was predominantly white and male. So you really have to navigate and you have to find the really important support for you. My support system at UC Merced are my colleagues, you know. So you have to find some really good colleagues that you can trust.
I second everything that she's mentioned. Absolutely, the support system, you know, will start off with the parents. And right now it's all the Title IX officers. And when I was starting off as a court clerk, it absolutely was the judges I clerked for. So those are the persons that looked up to me. Also, you know, they were very strongly, I guess, they very strongly wanted me to, you know, achieve certain things. And just like Callale, there are only a few Filipino judges floating around, you know, and way back when I looked around the nation to find out whether or not there are any Filipino administrative law judges, and there were two, me and then someone in California, and I was in New York at the time. So, you know, I believe that I could not, you know, set the low bar, you know, and I told my parents, and my parents just kept on pushing me at the time saying, you know, you're representative of the Filipinos, and you can't let these, you know, you have to give this model or put your best foot forward, because this is what they're going to, you know, develop, and this is what they're going to see. And I'm very happy to say that, you know, and I mention this, I guess, a lot, is that, you know, many of my decisions today, you know, have not been overturned, and I had nearly a 98% affirmation rate in the 5,000 trials that I presided over. So absolutely, you know, you need to be, one, your parents, two, your colleagues that you trust, three, you know, find a mentor that has similar goals and ideas and wants you to be successful. And then the core, I mean, we're all first generation. And the reason we're first generation is because, you know, we think we can achieve much more than, you know, our family. And they want us to do the same. So be persistent, you know, and take all of these steps, but take them, you know, in small pieces. You know, eventually that'll all build up. So, you know, I mean, just this whole career, you know, from law school to state judge to federal judge, you know, and tucked in there was a whole bunch of private sector things, you know, and I haven't talked about, you know, that's just, you know, part of a personality that I think all of you need to develop, because there, you know, you need to be in touch with relationships with your family and your children, you know. Then there's this part of you that needs to, you know, develop, you know, your artistic or creative side. And then there's sports, and then there's, you know, your religion or your God. So all of these things develop this full person. You know, one thing that I mentioned just very briefly, you know, is that, you know, on the athletic side, you know, I'm a surfer, I'm a cyclist, I'm a boxer. you know, and those are things that I like to do. I'm not very good, but I did win. You know, I won my first fight, you know, way back when, you know, and they gave me this big belt, and you know, now I think I'm, you know, like Pacquiao, but I'm not. I'm really not. But what I'm suggesting is that, you know, you can achieve all of these things, and first generation, you know, you've got so much to give, and your parents are behind you. I'm behind you. If there's anything I can do, if any of you are interested in law school, or you know, let me help you draft your statement, you know, handle your midterms, you know, assist you in moot court, you know, and your first appearance. Those are all things I've done for 20, 30 years now, with 5,000-6,000 trials under my belt. So, you know, myself, I'm more than happy to assist. I know Callale is, and I know there's a whole bunch of other Filipinos or Asian Americans at UC Merced who's more than happy to help anyone who's seeking to further their career, especially first generation.
Yeah, and you know, I want to really echo that, Michael, because when I was growing up, you know, I grew up parochial school, right? And so pretty much, you know, I was the one and only one. And I grew up in San Francisco. I grew up in a place called Richmond District, and the Richmond District was, oh, hey, Connie, yeah. So 19th and Balboa and Cabrillo. So back in the 60s, the Richmond District was predominantly Irish Catholic and Italian and Russian. And so just, you know, navigating through that, and yeah, and there is a certain kind of pressure that you have to kind of excel and so forth. But I have to say that a wonderful life is a really holistic life, right? So like Michael being a, you know, a boxing champion. So don't be afraid.
Not a champion, just I got lucky.
Oh, you got, so was that Golden Gloves, Michael, or what? Was it Golden Gloves?
I just, it's luck. That's all it was. It was just luck. That's all.
Okay, so I mean, but it's just so okay. Then I'll disclose something to you all, right? Which, oh, this is recorded. Oh gosh. Okay, so so in the Filipinos love beauty pageants. Okay, and so I so so I actually, because again, so when I danced when I was young. I did hula kahiko, I did ballet, I did Filipino dancing, I did jazz, I did all of that and stuff. And so they had these, you know, women were like, hey, you know, I think your daughter would be just fantastic. There's this national pageant going on and so forth. So long story short, I actually won this national beauty pageant. And so I was Miss Filipinas 1985, which was such a trip. I barely tell that to anyone, but it actually opened some doors for me because I actually went to the Philippines. I was on TV. I did interviews. It really helped me gain a lot of perspective and confidence, right? But I was different because it wasn't really about the external, you know, external this. I really was about um, making sure that it was my mind that was changing, right? And so that really propelled me and gave me the confidence to never stop, like Michael said, like persist, just keep on persisting. But I'm grateful for that and all of the other experiences that I've had in my life, you know? So I know we're kind of going out of what the original question was, but I thought I'd just share that with you.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely loving all these fun facts and all these different things, lessons. And so I think Brenda wanted to ask a question. Brenda, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you for sharing your stories. I really, really appreciate it. Just like hearing everyone's stories. I had a question. I know now both of y'all have kind of touched upon it. But my question is, what have you done that worked well for you to kind of like continue to push yourself onto like to get yourself new opportunities? So a little bit more background would be, I think as a like first generation student, sometimes we're told to shoot for the stars and you can do anything, but realistically, sometimes it feels like so until like where is that boundary? Because a lot of these resources in order to get there isn't really given to you, or you don't know how to navigate that. And so I know both of y'all were talking about kind of feeling like, oh, well, I can do that too, therefore let me just continue into these different opportunities. But how did you kind of like break that barrier to feel like you can also be as successful as other peers? Yeah, that's the question.
Are we doing ladies first again? Okay, I'll just touch them. You know, I think again, Brenda, it's really about opportunity and not limiting yourself, right? So, you know, someone said the biggest obstacle that you have is you. And you know what? I think Michael and I can both attest that, yeah, I mean, life is hard, and I'm not going to lie to you. There's ebb and flows to it. But every single time that you have a victory, you know that you can persist. And so the important part is that you know you can thrive in this environment, right? It's again the support systems, but really it's about you like mustering up to say, you know, I can do this, and don't put yourself in a box, you know, because sometimes I know from my parents, it's always been like, be safe, don't do this, don't join the military, that's not good, you know, things like that. And so that can keep you, even our culture can do that, keep you in a box. But really, and then if, you know, there's a saying that, you know, you fall 7 times, but you get up 8, right? So you just have to find those ways to motivate yourself, whether it's friends, it's family, support, and your support systems. That's so important. Michael, did you want to address that? Oops, your mic. You have to unmute Michael.
Michael, you have to unmute your mic. We can't hear anything.
You know, I just wanted to say also, I know Mike, I know if he's going to unmute, but Michael also mentioned that if you all, if come to either to Michael and me, very happy to help you. Because again, I think we know what it feels like to be isolated and navigating this, you know, this world, right? And I didn't have people that look like me. In fact, I didn't have any professors of color until I went for my master's program. So it was always important for me to be in a position that I can help people and they can say, oh my gosh, look at her. She is just like me. So please reach out.
Oh no.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. So be persistent. So I just didn't stop. I mean, in order to become a state judge, I figured, you know what? How many applications do I have to put in? You know, how often do I have to reach out to my mentor and ask? So keep on, just be persistent. Also, stick with your passion. What exactly do you like? And here's another, it's kind of a weird story, but it'll show my age and show just other things. So I'm a surfer. And one thing that came out way back when was this, and this is kind of dumb, but it just kind of just stuck with me, was this movie, you know, and it's called Point Break. And in that movie, this surfer, or this guy went to, you know, some sort of school and he became a special agent. So I saw that and I said I could do that. At the same time, I also applied for the federal level judge position. and I got both. I was accepted to the special agent training school for the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, and I was set to fly out to the East Coast to do their basic training. Coincidental with that, I received an offer from the Los Angeles EEOC to become a United States administrative law judge. So I just kept on going, and I just kept on applying. And these are the two areas that I like. And at that time, my parents had passed away. So I was thinking, you know what? If I take the job as a special agent and I turn down the judge job, my mom is in wherever she is, she's not going to like that, because it was just looked like a fun job. But she would like me to be much more than just having a fun job. So I chose the United States judge level. And every now and then I see I see surfing, and I think I can do that. But it's just, I was persistent. I kept on going, and I stuck with those things that I like. So this area, this Title IX, this Title VII stuff, I can talk for hours about this stuff. And I know the new DOE regulations. I've read the 2,033 pages of all of that stuff. So, that's just something that I like doing. And I'm going to make the recommendations for UC Merced on how to handle all this stuff. But that's what I like to do. So figure yourself out. What do you like to do? And you stick with that. And it really, really shows when you're talking to someone about this stuff. So if you're ever in my court and I told you, I'm going to have to take your child away, in best interest of the child, I sat in family court for a while, and here I have to make a determination about a termination of custody or termination of parental rights. It's a big deal. And how you display yourself and how you articulate what your thoughts are, that's huge. So be persistent, be knowledgeable, stick with your passions, use your mentors, and a combination of all of that stuff will get you to exactly where you want to be. And if it's not exactly where you want to be, it opens up those other doors, like that ATF stuff. I never knew I was going to do that. Holy cow. When I first got that, I was thinking, that's great. I was going to wear, a special agent windbreaker, and that's all I really thought about. Wow, I was going to wear a windbreaker, and then, be an undercover agent, but here I am now, 15, 25 years later, a former state judge, a former federal judge, and now here at UC Merced. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff in there only because I was just persistent. And I'm encouraging all of you to be persistent. Yes, absolutely. It's going to be horrible. You're going to pull your hair out. You're going to wonder what to do now and why is this so tough? Well, if it's easy, everyone can do it. But it's not that tough. If I can do this stuff, if Callale and I can hit these kind of obstacles and then move and progress forward, all of you can certainly do that. And I encourage you to do that. And if you need help, and I know she and I are here to offer anything we can do, but there's many, many more mentors and persons who are much more qualified than myself to assist in your ultimate goals.
And I think the key, Michael, is, Joseph Campbell, it's a big motto of mine, right? Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss, which especially right now in college and so forth, you're really exposed to different studies and so forth, right? And you've really got to do a check on yourself and say, what is it that really moves you? What do you like to do? Do you like to help people? Are you more like, are you interested in reading a lot of stuff? You got to find your passion, because when you find that passion, it's not work. It really isn't. Like Michael said, he can go through 2,000 pages of documents and really be like super interested in it, right? Because he's so passionate about it. Like I can talk to people all the time because I'm passionate about it, or helping, right? I love conflict and communication, right? So find your passion. And if it doesn't fit the box that maybe your family or friends think that who you should be, you need to find that passion. You should not be told what you should do, right? Because the first thing my mom told me is, don't, if you're going to go to college, what does all the Filipino women do career wise? Be a nurse, right? And I said to her, I don't want to be a nurse. All Filipinos are nurses, right? So it was just not my thing. So I really was the black sheep of the family, but I'm super happy now.
Awesome. So, I think we have a question. How do you approach a faculty member as a potential mentor? I'm shy and fangirl too hard sometimes that I don't know what the first step is. That comes from Destiny.
Okay. The inside information is they want to help you. They want to help you. So I know it's going to be a little awkward, but they want to help you. They're faculty, they're teachers, because at their core, they want to help. So give them the opportunity to help. Take as much information and networking and whatever they have to give. They want to help you.
Yeah, and I mean, I got, when I was assistant dean for grad division, you know, student, and I was one for at the CSUs as well as the UC, and so at the CSUs, you know, students would come up to me all the time because there's this thing called the mentor. He's got to be a mentor, you know, and so forth. The thing is with that, you know, yeah, you have to develop a relationship first, right? So I know you're shy, so you need to break out of that and be curious, right? Ask the faculty questions about their research, that something they're passionate about. That will be the link. And then then you'll start to develop a relationship and so forth, right? Because it's difficult to say, hi, I'm Sandy, and I would like for you to be my mentor, right? It's more like, hi, you know, Professor so-and-so, I'm really interested in this research. Could you tell me how you went about doing this? And you'll see that they'll just talk all about the research, right? You've developed a relationship with that person. Then you may want to say, you know, I'm really interested in maybe working in your lab, right? Can I volunteer maybe a few hours a week to work in your lab, or maybe shadow your lab, right? When a faculty member, number one, in graduate school, they always want to find someone that is passionate, you know, and if you're passionate about what they're doing, they will naturally have you as a mentee. Yeah. And Destiny, you know, just step out of the box of your safety zone. You can do it. You can do it. And call me and Michael. We'll help you.
One more thing about stepping out of the box. Take that risk. Okay? Are you ready to take the risk and lay it out all on the line? Okay? Some people aren't, some people, I mean, so remember that boxing story I told you? That scared me to death. You know, and what was the risk involved? Why am I doing this? The reason I was doing this was twofold. One, I needed to develop my reputation with the people in that area. And at that time, I was working in the private sector for this Indian tribe. And the Indian tribe, you know, had this whole culture about the warrior, about all of this stuff, you know, and, you know, I came in as this little, you know, Asian guy who wore the glasses, and I was really a geeky, nerdy kind of guy. You know, and they respected me because I told them all of this stuff. You know, I was a former judge at that time. But what I needed was that I needed something else to get close and making sure that we had a very strong relationship. And I developed respect with them. They thought about this whole fighting thing, and there just happened to be a Battle of the Badges where it was like a law enforcement fighting a boxing event. So I signed up. I was going to get beat up. I knew I was going to get beat up, but I took the risk, you know, and now they saw me in a different light. I just wasn't this nerdy guy, you know, it was just a guy who took that risk. Now, that was very calculated. And the long story is, well, my story is the guy got so afraid he didn't show up. But he was a fireman, and apparently there was a fire, so he maybe not showed up for the fight. Anyway, long story is, you know, I still developed that reputation that I was willing to go that far. So do that. That's another thing, that risk. So here we are for your mentors, for your job careers, for those that one step, you know, and you know, all those movie lines are true. It just happens. It's right there, and it'll change your life, absolutely change your life and what you think about yourself. So, you know, just give it a shot, and you know, if not, just take small steps. You know, you're still going forward.
Thank you. I know that for myself, I'm pretty shy as well. So thank you for the uplifting words. It definitely, it makes it a little less intimidating, I guess. So we have one last Q&A question, and that is, what overall advice would you give to undergraduate students?
Ooh.
You first, Callale.
Wow. I mean, you know, I think that that advice with the follow your passion, because you know, follow your bliss, follow your passion, because I think that's where you have your truest and most authentic self. Um, you know, I think especially, you know, culturally, especially as an Asian American, we have this type of stigma for ourselves that we have to, you know, excel like this, right? And so I think it's just really important that you are kind and gentle to yourself, and then, like Michael said, for every little step of the way, you know, don't forget to say, wow, I did that. You know, like Madeline right now, you are co-hosting with Connie. What an achievement, right? So these are these small little steps at your age right now that will really help to propel you. So fast forward to looking at Michael and myself, that you're able to talk to others really freely. So these are all learning opportunities, right? Take everything as a learning opportunities, especially the lows in your life, because there's something to be learned in that space.
My advice is to travel, get out there and experience every single thing that you can right now, especially at this age as an undergrad student. I did that, you know, I took a year and I studied in London, you know, and you know, I wore the wig, I wore the black robe, I was the, you know, we had all of these experiences. That movie with the wand and the magicians, Harry Potter, okay? They had they had a whole set. I mean, that's what we had to wear in order to be part of the solicitors and barristers in London. So here I am, and at that point, you know, Asian people or any persons, minorities, as a solicitor or barrister, oh my God, it was just totally frowned upon. So you travel, you have these experiences, and you know, I can tell you for days all of these stories about, from being in the courthouse, from, you know, things regarding athletics, from the travels I had, from all the school experiences. Get them, do as many as you can, okay? And then you focus, but do it passionately, okay? Don't, of course, you know, be safe about it. You know, nowadays you've got this whole different set of, you know, restrictions, you know, so it's different, you know. But back then, you know, I traveled through Europe, my second year in law school, you know, so, you know, what an experience, you know. So travel, get all that stuff down, find your passions, do your networks, okay? Relate the travel to whatever your ultimate, you know, goals are, okay? And if not, you can take a year off. I mean, Colby College was liberal arts, so at that point, I didn't know what I was going to do, you know, and a whole series of events led me to, you know, state attorney, state judge, federal judge, UC Merced, you know, all of this stuff in the private sector, you know, and then, you know, develop your relationships. I mean, we're human beings, so, you know, I'm married, beautiful children. I don't know what I would do without my wife and children, you know, and, you know, like I tell you about these stories, at this point, they hate hearing my stories about all of this stuff, okay? But they're first generation. I'm instilling my children. I mean, they're going to follow us, just like all of you, I hope. It's just going to take one thing. You know, look, I talked to Mike Salvador, and he seemed to be talking his head off about all of this stuff, you know, but frankly, it worked. You know, look, I'll send you the resume: state judge, federal judge, boxer, you know, married, children, you know, UC Merced, you know, and this stuff, this Title IX stuff, is not, you know, these are high profile decisions and cases that alter people's lives, you know, in addition to, you know, family court, divorces, separating children, all of that stuff. So, you know, look at that's a whole gamut of experiences. So undergrad, get those experiences, travel or do something that, in order to, you know, fulfill all of those perspectives, whether it be music, whether it be your God, whether it be your relationship, whether it be academics, you know, be a complete person.
Yeah.
You know, and it'll show. It will absolutely show. When someone talks to you about, I don't know, my wife was talking the other day, you know, about all of these things regarding these these plans for COVID, you know. So what does that mean? What that means is I started a new company. Oh my God, why would someone do that, you know, and at this time? But why? Because all of these regulations, all of these opportunities are right there if you can see it. So grab it.
Yeah.
Who else is going to do it? You know, so, you know, but these are very calculated moves. Okay. You're like, here's your resources. This is what I can do now. You know, maybe I can't do this a few years from now, but, you know, all of these things have a very strong foundation, travel, networking, You know, keep within your passions, know your capabilities, know your friends, know where you can fall back on, all of that stuff. And then smile. I mean, you know, you're going around this once, so just really have a good time about this stuff.
Yeah, and then, you know, just one quick, because I know we're about a minute over time, that, you know, also too, when you get into a position, because like right now, I'll tell you what I told my son, you know, you are becoming, and you have to, you know, have all these different experiences, because later on, you know, all that totality will, you know, be used for, you know, your career, your relationship, and who you are. But, you know, what's really important too is just do not forget where you came from. And so when you're in a position of power and you're in a position that makes these decisions, do not forget to help someone else, because that's what we're here for, right? So I never thought that I would be here talking to you all, right? It just kind of naturally came with my passion. So I hope maybe 20 years forward, you will do the same and help raise someone too, okay?
Awesome. So thank you all for asking your questions, and thank you all for sharing your story. If we can all give a round of applause, either emoji-wise or audio, you know, round of applause. Thank you for sharing. And Michael, Callale, do you all mind sharing your email so that people can reach out if they have any questions, or if they ever want, you know, create that mentorship relationship? You know, if you could just share your email, that'd be great. Yeah, so thank you. So right now, Callale and Michael, if y'all need to head out, that's okay. I'm gonna share my screen and do the raffle for the Target gift card. And so, yeah, so check out the chat box if you want their emails, and I'm gonna do the raffle right now.
Okay, bye.
Callale, can you put my email down? I do not know how to do that here. I
can do
apologize.
that for you, Michael.
Okay. Thank you very
Awesome.
much.
Thank you so
for
much.
having me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. All right, so I got the names from the chat box for the folks who stayed throughout the whole duration, throughout the whole event. So I put all your names here on this wheel, and I'm gonna click it and it'll randomly select a name. Does anyone not see their name? Okay, I'm gonna click it. The Target gift card. Yeah, so we'll send a follow-up email, and it should take maybe about a week for that gift card to process to send to your email. Thank you everyone again for participating. Maddie included Michael's email, and so feel free to like reach out to any of our speakers. Next week we're having 2 additional speakers. We have Professor Sapana Doshi, who is a CREST professor, as well as Leilani Kupo, who is the director of the Calvin E. Bright Success Center. And so that will be on next Tuesday, May 26th from 4 to 5 p.m. And we're gonna post that right now on social media. So check out our social media for the flyers. So thank you everyone for participating.
Thank you, everyone.